All right. Well, I want to first of all thank the leaders of law enforcement from Zone 5 that stand next to me, with me, behind me, around me, for their leadership. We have been here today in Fresno in closed-door session all morning, bringing together local, state, and federal law enforcement to talk about the challenges we face and to also talk about how we are prepared to meet those challenges. It was a very productive morning where we talked about the impact of transnational gang activity and the impact not only to public safety but the work that law enforcement needs to do to meet that challenge. And it's going to be about best practices, which we know how to do. It's also going to be about the need that local law enforcement has for more resources, because in these difficult budget times, the reality is that the folks who are committing crimes are not issuing layoff notices, they're not on furlough, they're not taking the day off, and neither can we. So I'm here as the Attorney General of California to say that I stand in support of our local law enforcement leaders and everything that they know they need to do, exercising their good discretion to get the job done in this community. We were also here to talk about not only transnational gangs, but the concern that local law enforcement has with the issue of human trafficking and how we can employ, again, best practices and coordination and collaboration to focus on the reality that coming up through the tunnels down in Imperial County and across the border with Nevada are often girls and women and also boys who are trafficked for the purposes of sex work, trafficked for the purposes of indentured servitude. And we know that this is a crime. It is a crime that is equal in seriousness to the trafficking of other commodities, which include drugs and guns, and often the trafficking of all three are connected, and connected by the cartels and other organized gang operations that understand that it's a business with high reward in terms of the profit that they make, and we're focused on it as law enforcement, and we plan to do everything that is necessary to take them down and take them off our streets. So I want to recognize, next to me I have Chief Jerry Dyer. There is Sheriff Bill Whitman. We have Sheriff Margaret Mims, Merced Sheriff Mark Pazin, and Chief Colleen Mestis from Visalia, and Sheriff David Robinson. And they, along with some of our friends from the California Department of Corrections, the Director, Amber Selly, as well as the California Highway Patrol, are here to symbolize what we are doing with law enforcement these days in California, which is, you know, the bad guys are talking to each other, well, we are too. And so that's what today was about. We are also here to talk about a subject that may seem to not have any connection with the issue of public safety, but has a very direct connection with it. And it's the fact of the foreclosure crisis and its impact in California. Last year, California often had 7 of the top 10 cities hardest hit in the nation by the foreclosure crisis. There were times last year when we had 9 of the top 10 hardest hit cities in the country. And when you talk about this as an issue, you can talk to folks like the chief of Stockton, California, which Stockton had the distinction many times of being #1 on that list, competing with Nevada, Las Vegas for #1 status. And the police chief of Stockton last year talked to me about the fact that in the first 6 months of the year, he saw over 200 crimes associated with those abandoned properties. Crimes that related to everything you can imagine, including rape and homicide. When we look at the issue of blight, that is directly a function of the foreclosure crisis we've experienced, we know that that is an issue that attracts criminal activity, and it impacts the productivity and the well-being of the communities we serve. It's a real issue, and it's a meat and potatoes issue as far as we're concerned. So among other things, we were, as a state, part of a national mortgage settlement that resulted in us being able to bring $18 billion back to California to deal with the needs of our homeowners around principal reduction, so that they can get a monthly payment that they can afford that's more closely connected with the market value of their house instead of the inflated rates that were being shopped around a couple years ago. I'll tell you that of the Central Valley counties that were hardest hit in the first quarter of 2012, on the nation's list, Stockton was again #1, Modesto was #2, Merced was #5, Sacramento was #6, and Fresno was #12 on the nation's hardest hit list. What we know is that there were approximately 1 million children in California that were associated with those homes that were foreclosed upon. We also know that currently there are 500,000 homes that are in the foreclosure pipeline in California, meaning there is an impending foreclosure occurring there. So it's a big issue. In terms of securing the $18 billion that we brought back to California through the national settlement, Merced will receive, as a county, it is estimated, $215 million. Fresno will receive an estimated $300 million. Tulare will receive an estimated $119 million. Kern, $370 million. Madera, $85 million. Kings, $25 million. And Mariposa, $6 million. The next step is to pass what we are calling the California Homeowner Bill of Rights. And right now we've got a package of legislation up in Sacramento. It is in conference committee. And part of why I'm here in Fresno is to join with my colleagues in law enforcement to support that bill and to say that it must be passed. And it's basically about common sense fixes to a problem. In particular, it deals with 2 issues. One, the issue of dual track, which is an issue where homeowners are in the process of foreclosure. They're also in the process of paying a modified loan, and unbeknownst to them and without any warning, they're foreclosed upon while they're paying the modified payment and playing by the rules. That is simply unfair. We need to end that system. The second piece is this. Countless homeowners all around Fresno and Visalia, Tulare, all of these counties, Los Baños, have talked with me about the fact that while they're going through foreclosure, they're trying to get somebody on the phone at the bank, and if they get anybody, that person is unfamiliar with their case. They have to tell the story over and over again to each person they talk with. They have to fax the materials over and over again each time. This is creating unnecessary confusion and chaos in the lives of people who are already completely overwhelmed, because all they want to do is pay to keep their home and really live the American dream, because we're talking about hardworking people. So the second bill, very simple fix. Let's require a single point of contact for that family. So when they call, they can have someone who remembers the last time they had a conversation, and so everybody can be playing by the same rules. That's what this is about, and I'm very honored to have the law enforcement leaders that are standing here today in support of this legislation, knowing that there is a connection between keeping families in their homes and what will occur in terms of safety in a community. Keeping families in their homes is about maintaining and holding up people who have decided they want to make an investment in their communities. And that's good for law enforcement, it's good for public safety. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the great sheriff of the great county of Fresno to speak a few words. Bill? Tulare and Fresno. But no. I'm going to first turn it over to Bill. That's because right. We're in his county right now. No, you're not. Or
we're close to my county.
But I want him to
He's
talk.
the Zone 5 chair.
I'm Sheriff Bill Whitman, and I'm the sheriff of Tulare
Yes,
County,
you
which
are.
adjoins Fresno County. You know, I come from a small county. I've lived there all my life. I've been in law enforcement for 42 years in that county. So I know a lot of people. I'm out in the community. I know something. When something bad happens to someone in my county, most of the time I'm going to know that family. I've had relationships with them, and I'll know what's going on with their life. I've seen firsthand how devastating it is for the people in my county. And I've seen firsthand, like many of you, the families that have been removed from their homes. Then I've seen firsthand the opportunity to drive around my county and see homes that are boarded up, windows broke out of, the lawns died out, the place needs painting, and it would take thousands to rehabilitate that home. I applaud our Attorney General, and I stand behind her on this bill. I think it just makes common sense. And most of the time, remember, we in law enforcement at the county sheriffs, we're delegated with the responsibility to serve those notices. And so I get those phone calls from the families the next day. If not the people that we evict, I get the phone calls from their grandmothers, from their uncles, from their dads and moms. So we know firsthand. We're personally involved in it. It impacts us and impacts our lives and our families. So I'm really proud to see our Attorney General take the leading role to provide the leadership to get something done to slow these foreclosures down. It just makes common sense. There's nothing in those bills that's mysterious or anything. It's common sense. So I want to again thank you, Kamala, for coming to Fresno County, and thank you for your leadership role in these bills.
Thank you. Okay, and next we're going to have the great sheriff of the great county of Fresno, Margaret Mims. Come on over. Yeah. There we go. Exactly.
Thank you, Attorney General. You know, in Fresno County since 2007, we've already had over 27,000, almost 28,000 foreclosures on homes. Every sheriff in the state of California has a civil unit, and our responsibility is to serve legal papers. And what I hear from the people that work in my civil unit are the devastation that it causes the families when they have to go out there and serve those papers. They also tell me about the blight when they go out and they find the homes that have been empty for some time. They are a magnet for vandalism, for burglary, and it brings down the property values of others in that neighborhood. Attorney General Harris's proposed legislation provides increased enforcement capabilities, due process for the homeowners. It gives local law enforcement additional tools to avoid blight as a result of these foreclosures. And I'm pleased to stand up here today and join her and support her in her efforts with this legislation. Thank you.
And next we have Merced Sheriff Mark Pazin.
Again, I'm Sheriff Mark Pazin, Merced County. I'm probably going to be a little more edgier than my counterparts, and I just want to remind everybody a few weeks ago that there was a deputy killed in the line of duty in Stanislaus. We were all in attendance at that funeral because of what we called a routine lockout. With this legislation, had it been in place, reversed that set of circumstances that was set in motion that particular morning, I submit to you, yes. We have a lot of persons that are grappling with this situation of losing their home, losing their condominium, and it was a direct result that a deputy sheriff and an innocent locksmith who were doing their duty because paperwork was filed. I applaud the Attorney General for being intuitive about this situation because, as my counterparts have mentioned, both Sheriff Whitman and Sheriff Mims, it's sad when you get the phone call after you, quote, hung paper on a house for foreclosure and that you have a quick turnaround. Just had a call this weekend, something similar to what Sheriff Whitman had mentioned, that this person had 2 days to move out on Mother's Day, just this past weekend. Granted, some of the responsibility could be on that person for not taking advantage of those previous weeks, but suffice it to say, there has to be common sense legislation. That is what the Attorney General is proposing. And I just want everybody to remember that officer that was killed in line of duty because of a set of circumstances that was set in place along with an innocent locksmith. Again, thank you, and I applaud you.
Thank you. And Chief Jerry Dyer.
Thank you, Attorney General. I'm going to start out by thanking the Attorney General for hosting her zone meeting here in Fresno. The information that was shared today was information that we need. And when we talk about the issues with realignment, human trafficking, transnational gangs, all of those things are important to us. And as we stand here before you today as representatives of law enforcement, this issue, this bill, is extremely important to us. You know, when we talk about foreclosures, and nearly 28,000 of them in Fresno County since between 2008 and 2011, has become very, very problematic for law enforcement, because eventually law enforcement gets brought into these situations. Foreclosed homes they attract a significant amount of unwanted activity, whether it's squatters, drug trafficking, individuals that go in and destroy property, start fires, indoor marijuana grows, which we have seen a significant number of those in the city of Fresno. Frauds that have occurred as a result of people that are being desperate to try to save their homes, and violent crime. I think back to an incident that occurred in our city in December 5th in the northwest part of Fresno, where an individual from the Los Angeles area was killed in our city. And he was rolled up in carpet. They killed him in an abandoned apartment. But what we found during that murder investigation, after we arrested the suspects responsible, that they had been staying in abandoned homes that had been foreclosed upon, and they had become street people involved in drug activity and ultimately the crime of murder. In years past, seldom were we called in the police department to assist code enforcement with abandoned homes, but today it's very, very frequent. In fact, there's been some 30% increase since 2010, where we are called out to assist code enforcement with these homes because of the people that are occupying these foreclosed homes within these neighborhoods. And that's unfortunate. And when we talk about fraud cases, we've had incidents in Fresno where people had represented themselves as a landlord renting out foreclosed homes to people without having the legal right to do so. We've also seen fraud cases where individuals that are representing themselves as going to refinance the home, when in reality they have no intentions of refinancing that home. They take the money from that desperate homeowner, and not only is the homeowner going to lose their home, they're going to lose whatever money that they put forth to try to save their home. So I fully support what Attorney General Harris is trying to do. It is a common sense approach. We do need to protect our homeowners, because when we protect our homeowners, ultimately we protect our neighborhoods.
Well, I want to thank everyone who's here, and also we have some statistics, and a number of the comments here brought it up. You know, part of the meeting, like I said this morning, was for us to talk about the challenges local law enforcement is facing. For the first time in the recent history of California, chiefs and sheriffs have had to look at their troops, sworn officers, and issue layoff notices, have had to talk about what we need to do around furloughs. And it's not because crime has gone down, but it's because we're existing in a climate where the budgets many of us are facing deficits as county government, as state government, and we've got to make difficult decisions. But let's talk about the connection, again, between issues. The number of foreclosures for Merced County between 2008 and 2011 was 18,229, or 1 in every 5 homes. The settlement money that will go in is to that community is about $215 million, as we said. But we also have numbers that show the economic impact to those communities for blight and for all of that. And I'm happy to provide that to the press afterward. But the numbers that we are looking at are pretty significant in terms of millions of dollars that each community will face in terms of depreciation for the value of the homes in that community, and what will be a decrease in terms of property taxes and things of that nature. So it is an economic issue as well as a moral issue as well as a public safety issue.